let me chime in and say good morning. Good morning to the entire trial. And this morning, Grenada, our sister isles of Carriacou and Petit Martinique. Good morning to one and all. Hope all is well with everyone this morning. And welcome to another edition of To The Point for today. It's Tuesday, and it's the 18th day of October, within the year 2022. GT with you this morning, folks. And yes, I'll be with you for the next couple of minutes. Come and sum it off like that, the next couple of minutes. Let me say good morning to our listeners this morning. If you're listening via K105, good morning to you. Those of you viewing via GBN TV, welcome. And certainly have an interesting program lined up for you this morning. Once all goes well, lots of information certainly will be thrown out to you. And let's get set to introduce my guest this morning. This morning we'll be talking to representatives of the Grenada land actors, and we're going to have a chit chat with them. Various issues they would like to speak about, and we will certainly be entertaining them this morning. And certainly the information that will be thrown out this morning, I know for sure it will be of interest to you. And so let me get set. I hope the folks are ready for me this morning. Good morning to you folks this morning. And still see they have their the information. They're a bit muted and video per se. So hope I could get them to get themselves ready. Good morning. Hope you could unmute a bit for us this morning so we could have you introduce yourself and welcome to the point this morning here on GBN. And let's go over and see who we have there. Good morning to both of you. Good morning, lady and gentlemen. Good morning to both of you.
Morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for having us on your show this morning.
Thank you so much. Well, I will let you personally introduce yourself, and then we get into the conversation this morning. And there's a saying that ladies first.
Good morning. Thanks for having us. My name is Dr. Jody Daniel. I have a background in ecology, environmental biology. I work in wetlands, and I do a lot of biological monitoring. I am a director for Grenada Land Actors, but I also work with Gaia Conservation Network, which is another organization focused on citizen science and biological monitoring in Grenada.
All right. Thank you.
Over to Val.
Thank you so much. And of course, you can go ahead, sir, and make that introduction.
I'm Valentine Douglas. I'm the president of the Grenada Land Actors. Unlike Jody, I do not have the scientific background, but I have the consciousness about our environment, and really concerned of what the impact is on our country, both from climate change and human activity. So we're here to discuss some of the issues that we've seen in our country this morning. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Now, to get the ball rolling, I would say benefit for the viewers and listeners out there who may be hearing about your organization for the very first time. Tell us something about the Grenada Land Actors and the reason why you decided to start such an organization. I'm not sure who'd like to go first with that.
I defer to Jody because she's been around much longer than me.
All right.
Sure. Just to give a bit of background on Grenada Land Actors. So Grenada Land Actors is not just a Land Actors Association in Grenada. There are Land Actors organizations all over the world. So it's under the International Coalition for Land Actors. Grenada is just the Grenada-based one. So in, I believe, 2019, there was a consultation that happened with civil society, and they highlighted some issues that they thought were relevant when it comes to land protection and land rights in Grenada, and that is how the Grenada Land Actors formed. It was originally a group of civil society organizations that were concerned about land management and governance in Grenada, and eventually the group became incorporated as its own organization, but it does have informal relationships with other civil society organizations that are also concerned about land governance. I'm going to let Val expand on that somewhere.
All right. Well, there's something you want to say, Mr.
No, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I'm gasping from the introduction from the group and what you're pertaining to the reason or why you started the organization and what the organization is a part of, and I'm gasping that you seem to the organization, as you said, it's not only in Grenada, but it's a worldwide organization with other organizations being also who does the same. Now, you started off. You saying that your organization in Grenada, per se, started off with a petition. That's where you started off. I'm gasping that information here from your website information that I'm looking at right now, and it has grown to where it is that now. Now, the main focus I am picking up about the organization is that you want to see the preservation of lands in Grenada, and in terms of how it is used and the reasons why what it's been used for. Am I going in the right direction with that?
Yes, you are. The mission of the organization is just not only for the preservation of our land, natural resources, ecosystems, and others, but we also want to ensure that there is transparency and accountability in the process by which land is developed in Grenada. Prior to the 1990s, there was no systemic way of doing that. Back in about 1990, there was this environmental profile of Grenada, and a lot of the recommendations there, which serve as a guide, sort of created the Planning Authority back in about 2000, and in 2002, they had enacted, Land Development and Control Act in Grenada. That was revised and replaced, in 2016, and which is Act number 23 of 2016, which is what is used to guide and govern the planning authority. And so we have a lot of acts concerning that. The whole process is fragmented where land development is concerned, because we have a lot of ministries that are involved and have to have a say in the process. But the planning authority is the sort of central place where you go for permits to develop land. And when you hear of the planning authority, you think of permits and building codes and so on, but it's much more than that. And it's really part of its mission is to make sure that ecosystem or heritage, cultural and others are preserved. And hence the reason why organizations like ours and other community service organizations are interested in making sure that we are able to, whenever we have developments in Grenada, they're done in a responsible way. Jody, go ahead.
Nothing to add there.
All right. Yeah, Jody, any follow-up on the question? I guess Mr. Douglas said something. Do you have any follow-up on that?
I think I'll just expand a bit on the legislation. So he did mention the Physical Planning Act of 2016, but we also have the Integrated Coastal Zone Act of 2019. And in that particular act, it sets out for us to have an authority similar to the Physical Planning Development Authority, but they're focused on coastal zone management. And in that act, it actually outlines some additional protection that coastal areas have under that unit. But unlike the Physical Planning and Development Authority, this unit has not been established as yet. So, as you mentioned, a lot of Grenada's protection of our cultural and natural heritage is kind of segmented on the different authorities, but physical planning has much of that control currently.
So are you saying that physical planning needs to be enhanced in a way that can help in terms of more regulating and monitoring of use of, especially when we talk of coastal lands?
Physical planning has a number of issues. And coastal development is one of the a primary concern of that. But before we get into coastal development, it's worthy that your audience become aware of the fact that physical planning has been a statutory body that has been in sort of a disarray. The former Prime Minister alluded to that when he appointed the former director CEO. He also said that he's going to streamline the process. And our current Prime Minister, I think in an address on or some news coverage, probably by GBN on the 21st of July of this year, did address that issue too. So the statutory body itself brings a lot of problems. They have an act, but their regulations are absent, and then procedures that they're supposed to follow are not always followed. So the ideal situation might be to have, for matters concerning coastal development, probably an environmental protection authority might be more appropriate rather than how the planning authority is structured at this time. So there are a lot of issues that needs to be explored both by the current administration and future administration if they're not addressed properly.
All right.
But coastal is of paramount importance to us because not only what the impact it's going to have on beaches, erosion, the development of wetlands, but there is an economic interest there. Lives and livelihoods would be affected severely because, as you are aware, most of our wetlands are on the coast. The mangroves that are on the coastline, they are the breeding ground for fish and replenishing our fish stock. Our coral reefs are those that support the nearshore fish. We have a lot of things that we enjoy in Grenada, the lambi, the sea eggs, and all the groupers and snappers and all of these fish, they would disappear. And actually the numbers have started dwindling significantly because of the way our coastline is being degraded, our coastal areas are being degraded. So when we have irresponsible development, that is going to be affected. One of the other things that we tend to ignore on the coast, and if you've seen in the past, there is evidence of it here. If you look at what was once the longest beach in Grenada, between Telescope Point and Conference in St. Andrews, they allowed sand mining, they allowed destruction of the mangrove, and that beach is no longer there. So the younger generation would never see a beach in that area. The northern end of the Grenville Harbor, there was a Telescope Beach, which I, as a child, enjoyed, and I know thousands of people enjoy that beach, and it's no longer there because of human activity that was not regulated, monitored, or enforced during that time. So what would be missing when people think, oh, well, these things come here, you guys are protesting, it's going to affect job. Okay, we strongly advocate for jobs, but it's the type and quality of jobs that we're looking at. But what would happen, for example, on Hope Beach, where you have constant erosion and that beach disappears? Where are the Grenadians going to have their lime? Where, when you have development that cuts off access to secluded beaches, and they cut down your grape trees, your mangrove, your coconuts, and everything, where are Grenadians going to go? Think of St. Andrews, for example. Hope is the only beach that they have right now that people can go and socialize.
All right.
And if you continue to do that on the East Coast and you destroy the others, where are our citizens going to relax and have some recreation, have their cook-up thing? So it is for everybody's good.
All right. I'm sensing the passion that you as an individual and even being part of the organization have. It's in terms of damage that are happening to the coastal. And let's focus a wee bit on the Lasages area, because you seem to understand that your organization seem to have a passion and seem to be worried a whole lot about the damage to Lasages. Tell us something of the concern that your organization have in reference to Lasages, the damages that are happening or occurring there.
Jody, I'd like to go first.
Sure. So when it comes to Lasages, I think one of the bigger concerns, I would first like to clarify why there's a big concern about these coastal areas. When we talk about mangroves, we're not just talking about mangroves because they are connected to seagrass beds and they're connected to coral reefs. So when you knock out one of these ecosystems, you're going to cause vast damage to the others. So that's one thing to note. So know that you have development happening on a beach, and during the construction phase, you've removed all of the mangroves, it then means that you have a lot of sedimentation that would have originally been filtered the mangroves going straight into the seawater. And you may ask, what's the big deal with that? You have seagrass beds there, you have coral reefs, and when you have increases in amounts of sediment going into these areas, the seagrass eventually, they get smothered, they aren't able to reproduce, and many of them die off. And then you see similar impacts to the coral reefs nearby. And so you knock out the mangroves, you can knock out the seagrass beds, you knock out the coral reefs, and then you're knocking out your fisheries as well. And it's not just fisheries in that area we know that there are hawksbill turtles that usually nest on that beach. And hawksbill turtles in particular require dense vegetation when they're nesting. We've seen evidence of the hawksbill turtles coming up to the beach, noticing that there's no vegetation. You see their tracks and they head back in. And then you also have green sea turtles, which are also found in that area as well. They would be feeding on the turtle grass in the bay. And if you're losing the seagrass because you're losing the mangroves, then you're also going to lose the turtles as well. So the big concern is the way in which the developments have been managed in Grenada, and I suggest it's just maybe an example of it, is that we do not do a good job when it comes to ensuring that we're doing enough mitigation, that the way in which we're constructing, we're allowing construction to happen, has minimal impact, and ensuring that whatever we're putting back on that landscape, especially in these very coastal and sensitive areas, are not going to mean long-term impact for people when it comes to their livelihoods. And to add to something that Val mentioned about fisheries, when we did some research in Woburn, we found that most of the fish, the juvenile fish you're finding in the wetland in that area, in the seagrass and in the mangroves in those areas, are the exact same fish that fishermen are reporting to catch. So there's a very direct relationship between what you're seeing in these mangrove ecosystems, what they're providing, and what people are catching nearby. So the general concern, just to summarize again, is that the way in which the development proceeds, we are losing a lot of these vulnerable ecosystems, and they are critically endangered elk-horn coral in that particular bay. We saw a lot, because of coral disease, we lost a lot of them a few decades ago. And when we're adding additional stresses to them, the likelihood of us losing them again happens.
All right.
Yeah, turn over to Val. Anything to add to that?
Val, you want to chime in on that, if you have anything to say on that, in terms of the damage to Lasages, as we focus on that for a wee bit?
But we've seen some really disturbing things happening at Lasages. When there was an EIA, which is an environmental impact assessment, and the planning authority usually requires that when you have certain developments. We believe that should be required for almost all the developments in the region. But in the EIA, there were specific recommendations that the mangrove be preserved. And as Jody mentioned, we know how valuable the mangroves are. But the mangroves were irresponsibly cleared, and what we've been hearing since is excuses. Well, it's done already, let's move on. Those are not responsible statements. You know, you cannot repair, replant, or regain that mangrove forest. It's been there for God knows how many years. But what also that mangrove preserve, it's something that we Grenadians enjoy. The birds there are about 70 species of birds that come there. Some of them are migratory birds. Others that we as citizens of Grenada would never enjoy, never see again. Besides the destruction of the mangroves, there were specific instructions there, recommendations, that the ponds, we had some salt ponds there, the silt from that be contained, and that you establish silt traps such that you do not pollute the water, as Jody said, that can destroy our seagrass and elk-horn's coral. But what we have seen lately in photographs is that instead of what is recommended, which is you create conveyances to extend the silt that is being released to an area to the north where the river empties into the bay. And then that has developed its own ecosystem where the silt is trapped by a certain grass in that area and it is contained. But that was not done. And what we had right at the southern end of the beach near the headland, it was a direct trench into the water and the silt was being released there. So those things are pretty disturbing. Clearly we have wetlands there. We have Amerindian sites, burial grounds, and a lot of things, archaeological things that have to be preserved. There is a phase 2 that's going to be going on there, and we haven't seen an EIA for the phase 2, which is one of the things that should be done. But we know that there is a lot of talk about starting very quickly. There are trees in that area that was recommended to preserve by the forestry and other departments that we've learned. And we don't know the fate of those trees. We've seen drawings of the proposed second phase, and the drawings suggest that the area would be cleared because based on where the buildings would be, there was no preservation of the grape trees and the coconut trees. And it's very interesting to see what access our people would have. In addition, there's a back beach at Las Vegas. And for probably centuries before us, people accessed that back beach from the main beach. And we witnessed construction on the path where that people used to enter that back beach. So Grenadians have a lot to be concerned about. There is no way you can access that back beach unless you take a boat and go around that headland. And I don't know how much of us have the luxury of, getting a boat to get there just to enjoy a beach that we had access to at all times.
All right.
So LASAGES presents a lot of problems that needs to be addressed currently. A lot of problems that, if not addressed now, would be to our own detriment. We have to think of our people recreation. If you know LASAGES, it's one of the most popular beaches in Grenada for locals. People go there, they cook up, they enjoy the music, they enjoy the shade of the thing. If that construction comes there, what are you preserving? You can build your hotel, but what happens to our wetlands? What happens to the area that our locals use? If you're going to clear it and make it a beachfront for your guests and your five-star hotel clients, well, we need to know that. And we as a people need to address it now before it happens.
Let me ask this question, because you gave a lot of details about the happenings there. Your organization, Grenada Land Actors, have there ever been any intervention or conversation with the developers, find out what are their plans in terms of preserving the environment, especially on coastal area? I'm not sure if it's Dr. Jody have ever had that particular conversation with the developers or so that she would like to share, and what was the response or the intention of the developers?
I'd say soon after the mangroves were removed, or another organization, Gaia Conservation Network, because I mentioned we do a lot of biological monitoring. We did have a few meetings with the developers. That is when we reviewed the EIA, and we gave them some recommendations, including that a marine study needed to happen, because that did happen as part of the original EIA, including some additional considerations they should have before construction starts. I think one issue that came up is that I think that in order for us to do a good job when it comes to environmental impact assessments, they're not just on environment, they're social, and we felt very strongly that there needs to be strong community involvement, and that was not necessarily a priority at the time. But I'd say broadly, I think our bigger frustration generally is that if an environmental impact assessment that a developer pays for gives specific recommendations, and it's not followed, it doesn't set any precedence to then listen to any other recommendations going otherwise. And I am not particularly, I think at the end of the day, the permissions giving to these developers happened from the Physical Planning and Development Authority. I think it's their responsibility, in my opinion, to ensure that if a developer submits an EIA, you have individuals who review it, you have individuals that make recommendations, and you have individuals that are monitoring to ensure that they follow whatever they said they were going to do. So as Val mentioned, EIA talked a lot about not cutting down any trees of a specific size. That you would assume that that's part of your terms of approval, but that wasn't followed. The EIA made recommendations of more extensive community consultation, and that did not happen. And even in a separate marine study that Val had mentioned, it was a pretty well documented study. They did a lot of work, and there were specific recommendations in those documents about what should and shouldn't happen, including that current outlet that's coming out on the beach. And those recommendations were not followed. So I think while it's great, I think many of us in Grenada who work in the field of ecology or environmental monitoring would love to see better done. But at the end of the day, I think there needs to be, the Physical Planning Authority has to ensure that if a developer is going to be developing in a specific area, whatever terms are set out in the EIA, whatever recommendations are given to them are actually followed. And we found that that has not happened.
All right. We due for a break in this segment. We come back and we should chat much more about the happenings there. We here on To The Point for today, Tuesday. We speaking with individuals from the Grenada Land Actors. We coming back after the short break. Please stay with us.
You've asked for it, and now it's here. The NLA announces its new mid-morning draw, commencing September 30th at 9:45 a.m. Yes, you heard right. Draws for Pick 3, Cash 4, and Playway will now be conducted 3 times daily at 9:45 a.m., 12:45 p.m., and 7:45 p.m., Monday to Friday. The Saturday draws remains twice daily. And that's not all. Simply place your non-winning Cash 4, Pick 3, and Playway tickets valued at least $10 from a single purchase in the NLA branded box at your favorite sales location for chances to win 10 prizes of $1,000 each. Whoa! $10,000 is up for winnings. Compliments the NLA. Be sure to write your name, address, and contact info on your entries before submitting. Promotion runs from September 30th to October 28th and would be drawn on Friday, November 4th, 2022. NLA, making your dreams a reality while supporting sports, culture, and nation building. Must be 18 or older to participate. Terms and conditions apply. See stores for details.
Wednesday, 26 October, Hot 98 FM will be blazing the airwaves from downtown St. George's. Come join the fun, meet the Hot 98 team and some of our partners in front of the Esplanade Mall from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. Great music, exciting deals, huge discounts, and enough giveaways from our partners and us. Stay tuned to Hot 98.5 FM. Like and follow our social media pages to find out more about Hot in the City. We will be coming to a city near you. Mark the date, Wednesday, October 26th. Hot in the City. Hot in the City.
This is why I'm hot, hot. This is why I'm hot, 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 hot.
Welcome back once again to listeners and viewers to GBN, those of you viewing via GBN TV and listening via K105. Welcome back. It's To The Point, today being Tuesday, the 18th of October. And this morning, our guests are of course, members of the Grenada Land Actors. And we're talking, this morning about the environment, damage to the environment, especially the coastal areas. We're talking lots of stuff this morning. Certainly hope time permits so we can get all in. Welcome back once again, Dr. Judy and Mr. Val Douglas. Good morning to Valentine Douglas. Let me get your name right, sir. And this morning, welcome back. I have a question I would like to ask in terms of your organization is very concerned about the coastal areas and everything else to do in terms of development on Grenada. You said earlier, Mr. I keep saying Val, Mr. Valentine, when you did mention that your organization is not about not getting individuals not being able to work. You are so happy for that, but it should be done in a way that the environment is protected. It's at least 100%. Now, we have a new organization. What is your expectation for the new administration in terms of seeking and making sure that when development per se takes place and what is done in the proper way? What is your expectation for the new administration? I'm not sure if it's Dr. Judy would like to go with that or Which one of the two would like to answer that question?
You go, Jody. I'll follow.
Sure. I would say I think top priority would be legislation. So the Physical Planning Act does outline that the need for regulations, and specifically when it comes to EIAs. And I think we're hopeful that that is something that happens very soon. So we have more extensive guidelines around environmental impact assessments for these larger projects. I also think that the same to the Integrated Coastal Zone Management Act, there are specific mentions of having a coastal zone management unit, and there would be a director and recommendation made towards EIAs. I think having regulations associated with those two forms of the legislation would be very helpful in ensuring that we do a better job in managing these ecosystems. But not to segue too far, I don't want to forget to mention that we also have mega projects happening in Mount Hartman, and the Mount Hartman case is one that concerns me mostly because of my background working with birds. The Grenada dove, as you know, is critically endangered. There are fewer than 250 individuals left, and due to that development that's happening in the south of the island, we've already lost Grenada dove habitat. I know that there had been recommendations not to do any construction during the birds' breeding season, but that did not happen. And so we are particularly concerned about impacts there too, and even in Lavera, which is Grenada's only wetland, but that's of international importance. It's a Ramsar wetland, and there have been propositions to put a marine protected area in that area. So the question becomes, how are we balancing putting a 16-story hotel and protecting a Ramsar wetland and protecting the turtles that are nesting on that beach, given that Grenada has one of the largest nesting sites there. So besides those two legislations, it'd be really important, I think, if this new administration could address these conflicts where you have areas that are protected, have long-standing protection, and now we're allowing development that seems counter to protecting those said areas.
Now, before Val chips in, has the group met or planned on talking to the new administration at all? Has there been any discussion or plans to have any discussion with the new administration pertaining to these issues?
Yes, we have reached out to the administration, and July, as you know, we are in litigation with the government, with the Planning Authority of Grenada, because we are asking for judicial review because they did not follow the laws, rules, and regulation in letting permit and development at Mount Hartman, Lasages, and Lavera. So we have reached out to the Attorney General in July, and we haven't received a response yet because we believe that when we started the case initially, we were branded as armchair environmentalists, and certain government officials branded us as members of the NDC, and they claim that that's the real purpose we bring in the case rather than, of our genuine concerns for the environment. So we've reached out to the Attorney General and said, let's take a look at this, let's talk about it, and we haven't received a response. We've also written I think at least 3 different ministries, and 2 of them have responded saying they'll get back to us, and 1 has not responded yet. The letters to those ministries, I think, were sent in August. As part of another group, which is the Climate Action Team, last evening we had an informal meeting with the Minister of the Environment. And based on the discussion, there was nothing concrete coming out of it. It was meet to greet, express our concerns, and she seems to be sharing our concerns strongly. And we are hopeful that, other government ministers may take it seriously and come up with a plan that we can work together for the benefit of all our citizens. So yes, we've done outreach. In addition, we have seen some hopeful signs when the current Prime Minister was in private practice. He represented client, basically taking the same stand as we do. He did ask for a judicial review in a case in Lansing, where he represented George F. Huggins, and I think it was last November that case was filed. And previously, he represented an individual in Coral Cove, because what is happening there, it's a group, the Charis group, they're trying to build a 120-room hotel at Coral Cove. And the residents of that area share the same concern, the seagrass, the turtles, and all of the impacts that it would have on that environment there. And so we believe the administration has some interest, and we are hopeful that they would respond and they would meet with us, as well as many other groups that share these concerns. These are national concerns, and I think they should be addressed, and they should be addressed in an expeditious manner. As a follow-up to what Jody was saying, there is an Escazú agreement to which Grenada is a signatory, but we have not ratified it. And the Escazú agreement is named after a place in Central America that is named Escazú. It's 33 countries, it's a regional agreement in Latin America and the Caribbean. And basically that agreement is dealing with access for information, public participation, and justice in environmental matters. And we appealing to our government to ratify this. So there's much transparency in the process, so that we'd be informed with what's going on at all times and we can participate in it, we're also looking for a healthy and sustainable environment. And what that would do, it would preserve it for current and future generations. So yes, to answer your questions, we are hopeful. We've reached out, we've done our part, and we're awaiting a response. We're hopeful that we can come together and discuss the serious issues, so that we all as a country will benefit from them.
All right. Let's focus a wee bit on regulations, per se, for the Coastal Management Act. How is that going, and how do your organization feel about it?
Well, from the Integrated Coastal Zone Management Act, we don't know where that is currently. The act was passed in 2019. It gives a sort of similar setup as physical planning, where you can have a CEO or a director, and then you have staff associated with you. And instead of placing just the sole responsibility of protecting our natural heritage on physical planning, which the Act does do, this Act is specifically focused on, when we're talking about coastal areas, having specific guidelines for monitoring, having specific requirements when it comes to EIAs, and even speaks to marine protected areas, and the list goes on. So this gives a specific authority to another group of individuals or another body to specifically focus on coastal ecosystems. From the conversations I've had, I am not too sure if this is on the top of the priority list, but this particular act is under the Ministry of Environment. So the Ministry of Environment would have to be the one that gets that unit going, while physical planning is under the planning unit. So the Ministry of Planning, sorry. So I guess we'll have to wait to see. We're hopeful that this is on top of their priority list, because it gives additional protection to these coastal ecosystems if we have that unit eventually established.
So if that regulation actually gets taken care of and it's put into proper use, what would your organization would like to contribute towards it?
Well, we would like to be part of the discussions and come up with regulations that we believe would be effective. And more than having the regulations, we believe that there should be enforcement. The physical planning unit has done very little enforcement, as you would notice in things that have happened in Grenada recently. You've noticed constructions at different areas, slippages, and all sort of problems where physical planning should have had some sort of input, and nothing was being monitored. We have breakwater in Sates, and we know the adverse conditions that is created for some of the residents there. And these are instances where if you had authority with enforcement powers would make sure that certain things that should not have happened did not happen. We have mentioned enforcement of the fiscal planning in a sort of informal meeting, I recall, sometime at Leverer, that really saw sort of kind of outdoors chit chat. And the then CEO basically says that he doesn't have the staff and he will never have the staff to do it. So here we are in a nation basically entrusting our environment, our future in the hands of people who are coming here primarily for profit and say, okay, guys, go ahead, do your thing. And nobody's there to monitor, nobody there is to enforce rules and regulations. And we've seen the result of that in Lasages, for example. So unless that government, when they enact regulations, at the same times, they have an enforcement unit that would go there and actively, enforce the rules, I think we'd be stuck more or less in the same position. So regulations and enforcement have to go hand in hand.
All right.
And I'd just like to add to something that Val mentioned in going forward. I think it's very critical that when we have these environmental impact and social, these assessments, that you have people of broad expertise reviewing them. If you had an opportunity to review one of these terms of references, you'd often see that they talk about a wide area. So it means that you can't just have individuals with background, let's say, in environmental engineering, or people who have a lot more knowledge in planning. You need to have people who may be archaeologists. You may need to have individuals who are marine biologists. You need to have individuals who may be social scientists, because these EIAs are supposed to encompass all of the possible impacts these projects can have. And if you have someone who from the ministry, who has a background in public health, who should be reviewing it, not there, then you don't have that expertise to say, hey guys, this is a gap here. This particular project is not doing a good job in treating their wastewater, and they're going to dump it right into the sea. That's not good. So in addition to that, I think a priority is ensuring that whoever is reviewing these EIAs have the expertise relevant to what the terms of reference have said. And this is not just something that happens in Grenada. This is something that happens around the world. I know of the case in Manitoba, Canada. When an EIA goes out, they pull a group of experts together that are relevant to that area of expertise to review it. And their recommendations influence what goes forward. So I think it's very important to have individuals who are broad expertise, but ensuring that those recommendations are enforceable. Because if you don't have enforceable recommendations, it doesn't ensure that whatever you tell the developers they have to do, that they're going to follow through with that.
So, Dr. Judy, are you saying that most of the EIA that are done, the expertise that who assist, some of them, or maybe I could say expertise, or who are doing these EIAs, are you saying that there's a lack of individual with the proper qualifications who are giving all that information?
I think we have a lot of competent people in Grenada who have the ability to do EIAs. I think the biggest issue we have sometimes is that we have to live the standard in ensuring that if your terms of reference for your EIA calls for an archaeology, that's been a big gap. You should have archaeology in your EIA. In the case of the Lasages project, for instance, we are aware that there are both Amerindian and African burials at the site where Six Senses is, and that even more at where Intercontinental Hotel is. But the EIA does not speak to that, right? So if we have to ensure that the TOR meet the terms of reference. There are people who are competent who can do excavations, for instance, but we have to ensure that whatever we're asking the developers to do, that it's settled in terms of reference, that is actually delivered as part of the EIA, and they do proper assessments. I think under the Grenada Museum Act, which is where artifacts are managed, technically, if you're a developer and there are artifacts at your site, you're supposed to do proper excavation, and these collections are supposed to go to the museum because it gives us information about Grenada's cultural heritage. We learn a lot about Grenada's indigenous people and our history when we do proper excavations, but the instances where people are digging up and you're seeing ceramics come up, you're seeing bones come up, and we're not doing proper work. So I think we have competent people. I think we just have to ensure the TOR of the EIA is what the EIA has, and ensure that the people who are reviewing the EIA are also people with all the expertise needed to review it. And I think if you have those things matched together, then we would have a much better path going forward.
I would like to give our listening audience an opportunity. Maybe they would like to ask you folks a question or two, if it's okay with you all this morning. Let's grab a phone call. There'll be an individual on the phone for a wee bit trying to get through to. Probably there's something, this topic may have grabbed their interest just a wee bit. Let's go over to this caller and say good morning. There's also lots of comments via our Facebook comment section, and I'll certainly give you a question or two from folks who are sending their questions via the comment section. Let's go to the phone line. Caller, good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Tillisford. Greetings and greetings to your guests. Very interesting comments being made this morning. I'm happy that these young people have taken the initiative to start speaking out at least now about, or how do you want to call it, the national territory, the inventory of a national territory and how it should be treated and otherwise. But I'd like to ask these questions. My understanding is that there are other environmental activist groups in Grenada. Two comes to mind. One from Sautiers that looks after certain things like the beaches, the waterfront up there and so on, the turtles and the nesting and otherwise. I can't remember the name now. It has an SP or something like that. And then there's one Friends of the Earth and so on, Mr. Antoine. Tell me, how closely do you people work on matters like these? The second question is this. You may or may not be aware that Grenada, the country called Grenada, doesn't own lands. The lands within Grenada belongs to the British Crown. It may be, my view, that it is because the lands belong to the Crown and the monarchy is why things have been going haywire without any control. Do you young people see anything that can be done so that one day, sometime in the future, that these lands become national state lands of Grenada? Thank you very much and have a nice day, will you?
Thank you so much also, caller. Anybody want to respond to the caller in terms of what he...
Yeah, thank you, caller. We appreciate your question. Yes, we are aligned with other organizations, and the letter, for example, that we sent to the ministries lists Friends of the Earth, and I think it also lists Spectre, if Jody can correct me. So when we addressing issues, I think the letter that we sent out to the ministries may have had a dozen organizations, including ours. Yes. The other issue concerning Crown lands, Grenada, probably in the East Caribbean, has the least Crown lands. I think Crown lands are less than 10% of our total acreage. Most of our Crown lands are in the Grand Tank Forest Reserve and the Mount St. Catherine Forest Reserve. We have little portions here and there, Granborough Estate, Montgomery Estate. Lassages has some Crown lands there too, and Montgazu and other places. Small pieces all over. We are not one of the countries that has a lot of Crown lands remaining. Some of our Crown lands have been conveyed to developers. For example, Leverett, they conveyed 243 acres of Crown lands to developers in the past, and they've had 3 or more projects that started and stalled there. But, those were Crown lands. Mount Hartman, there were Crown lands into play there that was conveyed also by our government. So when you have Crown lands, Cabinet can make recommendations to the Governor General, who can convey Crown lands, and our Crown lands end up in hands of developers sometimes.
All right.
So, yes, Crown lands are important, but we as a nation, when we're doing this thing, whether or not we're using Crown lands responsibly or otherwise, we have to preserve our environment. And we're doing it in a sustainable way. We have to do it in a sustainable way.
Let's entertain another caller and see what they would like to ask. Good morning to you, caller. Welcome.
Good morning to you, gentlemen, and to the lady. I think that all what the lady and the gentleman have said, they are so correct, totally correct. Let me say that. I appreciate what they are saying. But we are in the same stick and we continue in the stick. over 50 years, 40 to 50 years, we're talking about land policy. We're talking about policy for land. We're talking about agricultural land. We're talking about land for development, land for building. Not now. And the same thing just keep going wrong in circle. Government go, government come, the same circle keep being made. And we're not getting anywhere. Look at the lady said that they spoke to the minister, and they said they will get back onto you. There should be a policy there which guide all these things. And as long as we continue so, we are not going to get anywhere. You're supposed to have a land policy and know what development you want, and we seem to don't know where we're going.
All right. Thank you so much, caller, for your comment this morning. I would like to have a question that I see that is been mentioned there on the Facebook page, and this individual is saying if you all have any comments in reference to the breakwater project in Sauteurs. Anyone you two have any concerns or any comments you'd like to make about that? Dr. Jody or Sir Douglas?
Jody, are you?
Okay, sure, I'll give some information. I have colleagues that have a lot more knowledge of the Breakwater project, but from my understanding, what was built was not necessarily what was recommended. I think they did a study and they had listed a bunch of things that could have done to help with beach erosion, and what eventually was done was not in line with what was recommended, and the costs were a lot more. I think the recommended project they should have done, I think, was in a range of maybe 500,000 EC, but the actual cost was in the millions. So big discrepancy there. But I think the other issue is that oftentimes when we have government projects, we don't have EIAs. So this is an example of a project that was done that we did not have an environmental impact assessment from. And now we're seeing an extensive amount of erosion happening on that beach because of the project. And I think if we had actually done an EIA or done proper community consultation or just proper assessments, I am not confident that that is the decision that would have been taken to help with minimizing erosion on that beach.
All right. Dr. Judy and Sir Douglas, we're getting to the final stage of the program this morning, just around 2 minutes left. And this is a conversation that we could go on all morning. I know the audience out there will be interested to ask much more questions. There's so much questions being asked, especially via our Facebook page. I can't seem to get it to put all of it out to you this morning. But before we take a wrap this morning, any final comments you would like to make, Dr. Judy or Sir Douglas, before we take a wrap this morning?
Yes, the caller before talked about land policy and so on. And there are studies that have been done. We have a lot of policies that are in draft and they linger and may get in dust there. We have policies and draft of policies for over 30 years that are just lingering there. Studies that have been done by external agencies that reach government offices and ministries and just linger. So yes, these needs to be addressed. But also, I just want to address a matter that a lot of people would raise, the matter concerning jobs. And it's important that Grenadians think of jobs and do it analytically. If a hotel is coming and say they're going to provide jobs, what are the jobs that we getting? Are we getting low-paying, non-living wage jobs? Are we getting the jobs of the accountant, the chef, and all the managerial jobs there? Because here, what's happening in development? A developer comes in and he got a lot of concessions in construction. Millions of dollars in concession goes to the developer. Okay, yes, they bring in the external contractors and they pay them well, and we have some locals that get some jobs from it. But does the concession that developer get equate the expenditure in jobs that they have? Also, when a hotel comes here, it's concessions galore and tax holidays. So if a hotel comes here, your bed, your mattress, your fixtures, and everything you get concessions on. Are we foregoing tens of millions of dollars for that? All the profits that are going to be made by that hotel is going to be disappearing and nothing is reinvested here? What is the significance of our jobs? I want the authorities to release that information, that we know the concessions that are going out there, so then we can compare it with the jobs that they're being created. Because a lot of people don't do that analysis. And I want the listeners and audience to be aware of that and to start thinking that way. do the analysis. Compare concessions, tax holidays with the value of the jobs being created. And I think in the interest of time, that would be my final. Jody, you can probably chime in a few words before I cut us off.
Sure. I'd say in closing, thanks for an opportunity to share this information with the audience and with you. And I'd like to do two plugs. One is Grenada is currently doing with Canary Grenada National Ecosystem Assessment, which I'm a coordinating lead author on Chapter 2. And we're kind of chronicling Grenada's ecosystems, the current status of them, likely impacts into the future, and also doing a lot of additional work with that, including valuations and such. So that is something I think people can look out for. It's going to be an extensive document. It's going to be a heavy read, but I think it's going to give you a really good insight on the status of Grenada's ecosystems, and based on our current behavior, where our trajectories is going towards. And finally, to add to what Val said, I think it's really important for us to consider that when we make these sort of decisions, when it comes to development and lands, we don't have millions of acres of land to play with. We're a small island state. We are very much sensitive to the impacts of climate change. We've already seen extensive coastal erosion. We've already seen change in fish stock and such. So when we are not making good decisions when it comes to management of our coastal ecosystems, the impacts are much worse than in a developed world. So we are not just saying these things because we were just trying to make noise for make noise sake. But when Grenada makes poor decisions about 20 acres of land, that has a significant impact on our outcomes when we think about climate change impacts that we're going to see in the future.
All right. Dr. Jody and Sir Douglas, I want to thank you both for being with us this morning. Very interesting conversation, and I certainly hope we could do this again. Probably there will be more positive news you could bring forward the next time we have a conversation like this. I want to thank you folks. Have a great day. Thanks for being part of To The Point.
Thank you.
I want to thank all of the listeners and viewers this morning, whether you are viewing via our Facebook page or you're viewing via YouTube channel. Thank you so much. Those of you via channel 7, 11, and channels 20, thank you so much. And those of you listening via Q105, all the best. That's it for To The Point for today.